Marcus had been awake since 5:47 a.m., 17 minutes before his alarm was supposed to go off. This was normal for him now. Ever since his divorce was finalized 3 years ago, sleep had become something that happened in fragments, interrupted by the constant mental calculations of his life. Rent was due in 2 weeks. Emma's soccer camp this summer was going to cost more than he'd anticipated. His old Honda was making that sound again, the one that probably meant a repair he couldn't afford. He lay in bed for those precious 17 minutes, listening to the sounds of his modest apartment. The neighbor's dog was already awake, pacing. Traffic hummed on the street below. But the one sound he desperately wanted to hear, the soft breathing of his 7-year-old daughter, Emma, sleeping peacefully in the next room, that sound was silent, and it made his chest tight with a familiar anxiety. Today was his Saturday with Emma. His only full day off all week. The custody agreement said he got her every other weekend and 2 weeknights, which meant his job had to be relentless enough to support those days. The accounting firm where he worked as a senior analyst demanded everything from him. Long hours. Weekday overtime. Conference calls that bled into his personal time. His boss, Victoria Chen, was brilliant and cutthroat, the kind of executive who expected her team to mirror her intensity. Marcus had been hoping for a promotion for months now, something that would bump his salary up enough to give Emma a better life, to move them to a neighborhood with better schools, to finally breathe. The alarm went off at 6:04 a.m. Marcus silenced it and forced himself up. Emma's birthday was in 3 months. She'd mentioned, just once and probably thinking he wouldn't notice, that her friend Kaylee had gotten a new bedroom set with a desk so she could do her homework properly, as Emma had said it, with a kind of longing that broke Marcus's heart. He was working toward that birthday present. If he could land this promotion, if he could prove himself indispensable to Victoria's division, maybe by October he could give Emma that desk. That small thing that would make her feel like her life was getting better too. But he was tired. So tired that the exhaustion lived in his bones now, a permanent resident he'd learned to carry around like everyone else he knew. He showered quickly in cold water to wake up, dressed in yesterday's clothes that were still clean enough, and made himself a coffee that tasted like regret and necessity. His apartment was small but organized, a side effect of trying to control at least one thing in his life. A place for everything, and everything in its place. Emma's toys were in bins. His work papers were in a filing system. His life was a color-coded disaster he'd learned to present as having everything under control. The refrigerator held the ingredients for Emma's favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes from scratch, though the blueberries were frozen from the sale he'd caught last week. He planned their day already in his mind. Pancakes at 7 when she woke up. Then maybe the park by 8:30, before it got too hot. They could play on the swings, throw a soccer ball around. He'd keep her engaged and happy, and his heart would ache the entire time knowing that Sunday evening, he'd have to take her back to her mother's house. That was the hardest part. Not the exhaustion or the financial strain or even the loneliness that sometimes felt like drowning in slow motion. It was the letting go, twice a week, of the person he loved most in the world. When Emma emerged from her bedroom at 6:52 a.m., still half asleep with her favorite stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm, Marcus's entire body relaxed. This was what he worked for. This moment. Her small voice saying, "Hi, Daddy," like she was still amazed to see him there. "Hi, baby girl," he said, scooping her up even though she was getting too big to carry easily now. "Want to make blueberry pancakes?" Her face lit up in that way that made him believe in something bigger than his exhaustion. The morning was perfect in that small, real way that perfect actually felt. Emma chattered about school, about her art class, about a boy named Jackson who'd been mean to her friend. Marcus listened to every word while flipping pancakes, his heart absorbing these details like they were treasure. He'd missed her Wednesday and Thursday nights because of a late project deadline. He needed to remember everything about these moments. He needed to store them up. By 9:30, they were still at the breakfast table, and Marcus was checking his phone every few minutes. A work email had come through at 8:15. Then another at 9. His brain was already half at the office, running through spreadsheets and client concerns and the presentation he needed to prepare for Monday morning. Victoria always liked her reports by early morning on presentation day. Always. Daddy? Emma's voice pulled him back. Yeah, sweetie? Are we still going to the beach today? She'd asked him last week if they could go this Saturday, and he'd promised. The beach was an hour away, a full commitment of gas money and time and energy he wasn't sure he had. But her eyes were so hopeful. Of course, he said, pushing his phone face down on the table. We're definitely going to the beach. The drive there was long enough that Emma fell asleep halfway through, her head resting against the window, her stuffed rabbit in her lap. Marcus drove with the radio low, thinking about all the things he should be doing. His apartment could use vacuuming. He had bills to organize. The laundry he'd been meaning to fold was still sitting in a basket in his bedroom. He could check just one of those work emails at a red light, get ahead for Monday. But Emma's soft breathing from the passenger seat kept him present. This was his time. He'd fought for this time in his custody agreement. He wasn't going to waste it. The beach was crowded when they arrived, full of families and couples and groups of teenagers. The parking situation was worse than he'd expected, and they ended up a good 3 blocks away. Marcus grabbed their beach bag, a mismatched collection of an old towel, some sunscreen that was half empty, and Emma's cheap beach toys, and held his daughter's hand as they walked toward the ocean. The sun was brilliant and harsh. He should have bought a better umbrella. He should have planned this better. But Emma was already pulling him toward the water, her eyes wide with excitement, and Marcus let himself be dragged along. They spent the early afternoon doing the things beach days were made for. Emma built sandcastles while Marcus kept watch, reapplying sunscreen every 20 minutes and making sure she didn't venture too far into the water. He was actually starting to relax, to feel the tension in his shoulders ease with each wave that crashed on the shore. The work could wait. The promotion could wait. For these few hours, he could just be her dad. Around 2 o'clock, Emma wanted to go back to the umbrella they'd borrowed for shade, to drink the juice boxes he'd brought. Marcus was walking beside her, his mind already beginning to drift toward the drive home, toward evening, toward Sunday when he'd have to return her. That was always when the sadness started, on Saturday afternoon, knowing that their time was already running out. That's when he saw her. Victoria Chen was at the beach. His boss. The woman who controlled his professional destiny, who had the power to lift him up with a promotion or keep him struggling indefinitely, was setting up a beach umbrella about 30 feet away. She was wearing a sundress, and her hair was down. He'd never seen her with her hair down. At work, it was always in a tight bun, matching her tight demeanor and sharper-than-glass professional boundaries. Marcus immediately looked away, suddenly hyper-aware that he was in his old board shorts and a faded t-shirt, looking decidedly less polished than Victoria ever did anywhere. But his brain had registered something, had filed away the information that his boss was here, at his beach, on his personal day. It felt like an invasion somehow, like the two worlds he kept so carefully separate were suddenly bleeding into each other. He helped Emma get situated under their umbrella and encouraged her to drink her juice box. His attention kept fragmenting though, half on his daughter and half on the knowledge that Victoria was somewhere behind them, likely with people he didn't know, probably the kind of people who went to private beaches or nice resort areas. Why was she at this public beach on a Saturday? 20 minutes later, Emma fell asleep in the beach chair, exhausted from the sun and play. This was Marcus's window, the afternoon pocket where he could breathe for a moment. He sat in the sand beside her, letting the sun warm his face, and he must have dozed off, because the next thing he knew, Victoria was walking past. She was alone. She'd taken off her sundress. The shock of seeing her topless, wearing only the bottom of a bikini, hit Marcus like cold water. His brain didn't process the image correctly at first. Victoria Chen, his formal, always composed boss,